Evrard. Thanks for the good thoughts and the kind words about our relationship. And I'm hoping I can contribute a little bit to your journey here. So yeah, I grew up in Brussels, in Belgium, small country of 11 million people, where, as you probably know, there's a pretty strong sports culture, cycling, tennis, judo, field hockey. Those are pretty popular sport, and soccer, pretty popular sports in Belgium, where there's always been a good attention to building holistic athletes and athletes with a pretty a good focus on technical development and learning the sport the right way. So where I grew up, I was introduced to the sport by my grandfather, who played tennis at this tennis club called the Leopold Club in Brussels. My grandfather had started one of the very first sports specialty stores for tennis in the early 1960s, in 1962, where my mom, after graduating from higher education, not college, but education, to become an elementary school teacher, after being a teacher for a few years, decided to join my grandfather and work at the store, where essentially the business consisted of the stringing center of stringing rackets for people who play tennis back in the days in wood rackets and those other rackets. Don't ask me how they called in English, but those rackets with very complex stringing. It looked like a pretty complex operation to string a racket back then, and you had to like weigh balance the weight with different with the scale and all that. So yeah, so he started that, and that became initially it was a bit of a passion project, and that became successful as a small business back at that time. And then my father joined the business shortly after. He was a pretty sound businessman. He's still a very sound businessman today, and he has a good heart and a good connector and good with people. And the club grew into a nice local operation where they were liaising and stringing for many different clubs in Brussels. So we really we were born in the world of tennis. So I think I probably... Was
it only for stringing or other stuff?
No, they were selling equipment as well. So apparel, footwear, it was a small store that became a little bit bigger, and then they had little pro shops in tennis clubs as well. And also there's a major tennis event in Belgium back then called the Belgian Indoor Championship, which was kind of like a Paris-Bercy of some sort in Belgium, that they were sponsoring. That tournament was taking place in February, and they had, it was a big event in Belgium. So my dad had the sort of like the pro shop during that big tennis event. And then he sprang at the French Open as part of the Babolat team and things like that. So my grandfather knew the grandfather of Mr. Babolat himself now, and then knew also the distributor of the brand in Belgium and in France and all that. So I literally, as I said a couple of times already, really grew up going to showrooms, looking at new products and understanding the sort of like how the technologies are evolving in the world of tennis, and seeing brands, like Donne, Live and Die, and coming back and reinventing themselves. I was very, very fortunate to see great how they introduce new categories and new products, and the sort of what the campaigns were going to look like, and how they connect with clubs on many different levels.
And this is all happening when you're growing up in Belgium, right? Like, what ages were you around all this stuff?
Oh, as far as as soon as I was able to walk, my parents were always taking me to do all the purchasing, and whenever they were going to all the distributors to buy product and plan for the following season. So when I was 6 or 7 years old, I remember telling my parents, "Oh, I think the kids are gonna like that," or "Those colors make more sense," and always working at the store whenever I wasn't in school, meeting people and seeing people that you'd see at the tennis club, coming to the stores and interact with them, and understanding the world of business from grassroots perspective.
This makes so much sense, Anthony. I mean, I knew part of it, but this is the track that you took in your life. I mean, this makes so much sense to me now. It's amazing. Huh?
It's been a natural extension. It's been really fascinating to learn about the sport from many different set of lenses and build a great network with people who are very passionate about the sport and like yourself and yeah, it's been a great journey so far. I'm enjoying it.
This is great. I was going to ask you how important the relationship and the involvement that your family had in the sport was for your career, but I mean, you've basically said it all. I mean, I'm feeling the connection here. So it's big. It's since you were very little. So I understand, obviously, Court16 comes from a court that you used to play at when you were back home. That was the number for where you used to train, correct?
Yeah, in fact, when I started to work on the business plan for Court16 was the code name that I had saved the document because I was still working in the corporate world back then, and I had to be working on the side. But sometimes I'd open my files when I'm at work, and initially it was more something to save the document for the first iterations of the marketing plan, and then it became a business plan. So that was the roots of the name for the business. And down the line, when I left the corporate world, and it took years to kind of develop what the business would look like, I had brought together a few good friends of mine, some smart people, some writers, journalists, people from different avenues, copywriting, so very skilled people with naming projects, naming of companies or products, etc. And I did a few sessions in the building where I still reside today, to come up with the name for the business. And I described, this is, what I envision and the people who want to be involved. And there's this idea I had, there's this court where I grew up, where I was very close to my grandfather, and that court was at the entrance of the tennis club on the left. And this this court specifically means a lot to me because there was a little bit of shade in the back behind the baseline. And as my grandfather got old, my grandfather always wished to die on the tennis court, as strange as this may sound. And
oh my God,
that court was the court where he could still, in his late 70s, early 80s, play because there was some shade. He could sit down comfortably and not have to walk too far from the entrance of the club where he parked his car. So it was kind of a very convenient, physical court to play at. So, when I told that story, my wife and a couple of friends were there, like, why are we even doing this exercise? This is the name. Like, so that's the story behind it. Initially, it wasn't going to be the name, but then everyone thought that was a pretty good story. So that's kind of the story behind, the narrative behind that.
Nice. No, I think you nailed it. Tell me, growing up in that court, in that club, around your family, around tennis, playing it, I mean, knowing that you were pretty good at it, did you have dreams? Did they become clear? Like, did you know what you wanted to do with your career, or it was just, I'm going to the club to play tennis because I enjoy it?
So growing up, my sister was 4 years older than me. She was a great tennis player in a national ranking, traveling, as part of the national team. And I was just kind of following her in my early days and kind of mimicking whatever she was doing, not doing it as well as her. She was always a little bit more flexible, a little bit faster, a little bit working a little harder than me, but I enjoyed going to tournaments and started to play tennis tournaments probably when I was 8 or 9. I had a pretty, good ranking regionally as a 10 and under, 12 and under. I started to play at a pretty solid level nationally, started to play international tournaments, as part of the national team in Belgium in 12 and under, 14 and under. And I think it's at 15, the first time I traveled to the US to train. I went to a couple of academies during Easter. and I get to see some players from different universities training at those big academies in Florida, that things really started to be clear to me. I never really aspired to play professionally when I was 15 or 16, but the idea of playing college tennis became extremely laser clear to me, that this is what I wanted to do, because I always wanted to go to college, and I've always had a passion for marketing and branding from a pretty young age. But then I also wanted to be able to continue to play at a good level, you know. And I think that's something that's very difficult to do in Europe still today. When you're 18 or 19, you don't really have a track. So as soon as I went to Florida and I saw those, late mid 90s, those players with those amazing uniforms, and see them at 2:30, 3 p.m. coming to those centers and train for 3 hours, and the team spirit, that became really a dream of mine, to be able to come to the States and get an education and, you know, be part of this NCAA.
You studied marketing?
Yes.
And that's it, marketing.
Yeah, I think I ended up, I'm not quite sure. I think I ended up having a double major, international business and marketing management. I think that's what it was called back then. From there, I moved to New York in 2005 to work for one of my mentors today, Claude Brunitsky, who's the founder of Trace Magazine, and a very successful agency at that time called True Agency, which used to have operations in a few different markets. Now they're operating primarily out of New York and I think London, and where I became initially the marketing manager. I'm not marketing manager, and then head of marketing for his marketing agency and the magazine Trace, and that was a phenomenal experience working for Claude and interacting with a lot of really cool people in New York City at an interesting time. The type of projects we were doing were from event marketing to custom publishing. So I worked with a lot of great writers back then to create different custom publishing piece. It was also the early days of micro websites. So I got to work on build the websites for the US Open in 2006. The whole press kit with back then the Sharapova and the Roger Federer campaign. So that was a very exciting project. Yeah, summer 2006. And then in 2008, I believe, for the World Cup in Germany, I got to work on an exhibition that we had produced for Puma, featuring some work from different African photographers to support the big teams in Africa that Puma was sponsoring back then. And it's at that time that I built some great relationship with different people at Puma, and eventually ended up moving to Boston to join the global lifestyle marketing team. I think that was 2008 or so. 2007, I think. Not quite sure, but yeah, the World Cup was actually in 2006 in Berlin.
Yeah.
And in Germany, different sites in Germany. So I joined after that, a few months after the World Cup in October 2006 or 7.
This was about the time I started to know you, I believe, when you were in Puma in Boston.
Exactly.
Yeah. So more of a LA guy, Miami guy, or Boston and New York? I'm guessing you're more of a Boston, New York guy.
I love each one of those cities. They all bring something so different to the table. I think it's all about where you're at what stage in your life, and who you get to experience those cities with. So, I love each one of them. I think they all bring something very, very different in one's life.
For sure.
But they're all to be experienced in some way. They're all very unique, and they offer a very different. It's a very different discovery of what this country has to offer.
Mm-hmm. Let's hope we're back moving soon. But so after Boston, I know that you went on and did a couple of other stuff. before you actually went on to veer privately and do it on your own and open Court16. I'm kind of more interested starting in that era of your life and asking you about like the doubts that you had and try to compare those to when you would play on the tennis court, if those are pretty similar, and how you kind of fought through that.
So yeah, business in so many ways is comparable to playing tennis, right? It never stops. You're playing a match, and you have another match the following week or the following day, as long as you continue to play tennis, obviously. So business is very similar in that sense. You continue. You're not playing against someone. You're playing against yourself in some ways. So I think the similarities. You're asking me to compare the adversity, if that's the question, right?
Yeah.
So how do you handle adversity on the court versus adversity in life? I think maturity, you gain maturity, you're becoming a wiser tennis player with age. You're not trying to play the ESPN shot. You're becoming wiser, yourself, yourself better, especially with age, because you don't have the vitality on the court anymore. So you have to start to play smarter. So I think that's a good parallel in business. You're trying to surround yourself with good people with integrity. You're trying not to take yourself too seriously and be very stable, so that when you have some good wins and you have some not so good losses, you stay temper, and you maintain a certain level of composure and try to find solutions. So I think that's what I would say a good parallel is, like finding that composure and trying to stay cool and as much as possible. Obviously, it's not easy.
Yeah. And you sound like a coach right now. So so during your career with coaching, who gave you the biggest philosophies like in your life? Like, how did they stick with you? From where did they come from? Do you use them for life, again, in business? Like, what are these coaching philosophies that you think about sometimes?
That's a very, very interesting thought. I've been very fortunate to have really, really good coaches throughout my life, starting in Belgium at a pretty young age. I think in the early days, the focus on building a proper technique and having a good general understanding of the game. I've had good coaches in those foundation days, like 10, 12 and under, and then I've had some good coaches at the National Tennis Center when I was 13 or 14. It was an interesting time for me because there were a lot of really good players, the names that at that time, the Rokus, the Maries, the Justin Henning and all that. So I was part of a generation with a lot of really inspiring athletes who did very well for themselves. So it was always very challenging to get that visibility and the attention from the best coaches, because there were always some very, very good players with international profiles. So I think you learn as a 13, 14, 15-year-old player, you learn to handle those emotions, to find you place in a group with incredible players, and then players who are more in the middle of the group. But I would say that it's really hard to name one single coach. I think each one brings different things at different times in your life, and different relationships help you kind of overcome those obstacles at that time. I think it'd be disrespectful for one of them, for most of them, if I pinpointed at one specific coach. I'm in touch with the majority of them still today. I mean, we live in a global economy, and with social media, it's very easy to keep in touch. So I keep in touch with, whether it's my college coaches from in the US, or my, the equivalent of those high school years or earlier foundation days. I'm in touch with most of them. And I think it's funny now that yes, of course, I still see guidance from them in some ways, but sometimes they see guidance or some advice from me as well. So I think the relationship at some point in life are becoming a little bit more balanced, and you get to give back and bring some perspective with some of the stuff that they're dealing with. So it's been those relationships have been pretty rich relationships for me.
And was your family pretty involved with you in terms of the coaching, or they kind of left you alone with the coaches, or were they involved with your career?
Yeah, they were pretty involved until I would say I was 16 or 17. And then at that time, you start to go to tournaments with your coaches or with even with your girlfriend back then. So, with friends or so you as you grow, I think they were starting to be a little bit less involved, like on the court, going to every single game with me. But they've always been. I still speak with my parents every day, sometimes even twice a day. So they've always been very involved and emotionally, physically, mentally, or at what stage I was. But they weren't playing as much of a role starting 16, 17, going to matches. But they sacrificed, so many years of their life. They would never call it sacrifice. Taking us, just like all the parents out there, taking us to practice all over the place, driving an hour and a half, 2 hours sometimes in the middle of the week to go and train for an hour. Things that were, when I look back today, I'm very grateful for everything that they've invested in my sister and I, the time that the vacation that they didn't take because we had tournaments. Sometimes I still remember my parents not going, on vacation for these tournaments where I had a really bad loss. I won't tell you the score, but having my parents, when I look back, yeah, pretty much. When I look at the fact that my parents didn't go on vacation for 2 weeks, to not win many games, looking back as an adult today, I'm like, tremendous. I very randomly in the middle of the week, sometimes I call my parents to thank them for all the sacrifices they've made. Like, what are you talking about?
I'm 100% guilty of that too. I can talk to my parents randomly and tell them thank you for everything that you've done. I realize now as an adult that you actually made a bunch of sacrifices, and I'll do the same. I'll call them randomly and be like, thank you, Dad. And he's like, you're random, but so I obviously have shared this with you. I mean, I'm taking this opportunity to obviously do it in this platform, but you're one of the most inspiring people that I've ever met. I think you've,
thank you, Laura.
Yeah, for sure. You've inspired me. You've gotten my brain going in terms of my life with tennis. And obviously I've done it at a very high level. You've done it as well. You've done so many angles of the sport that I've always been interested in. And this is exactly what this project is about and this platform that I've created. And, you obviously were lucky that you were around a family that knew tennis, that was completely attached to tennis. Yeah, but you've developed this long-lasting relationship, and you're smart. You got your education. This is my dream, to have more people like you, more people that really do life the right way, but do understand and love the sport for what it is and for what it gives you for life, and bring those people in and really have them in the culture of our sport, because I mean, amazing things get created. I mean, and just Court16 is one example. But I think if we do a better job in I think educating and sharing these amazing stories, I think, I wish to get people inspired to really just see this as, we can all make tennis better, I think. So you've done it with Court16. I wish you guys obviously the best with all of this virus and everything, but I think you're going to be on your feet, and that I'm a huge fan of what you do. I'm a huge fan professionally and with tennis, and we've constantly worked together, so it's a nice thing. But now that I've said that, let's turn a little bit more into Court16. You've been around families, kids, you've been around, tennis club operations, and this is something that it's a very vivid thing that happens in our culture and community. So, I mean, a lot of people have clubs, and, I wish that clubs would run a little bit better, or maybe just differently, but maybe not. Maybe just it's the way it's going to be. But talking about Court16, you know, you've been around families, and what is your idea of what a healthy relationship with parent and the player is, the kid? I know they're young, but, you know, maybe in those ages, what do you see?
A healthy relationship between the parents and their children? Wow,
Yeah.
that's a very charged question. You mean tennistically speaking? What is the
Yeah, like in
question?
the
What should be
club.
the role? Well, I think we at the stage where, you know, we're not in the high performance 14 to 18-year-old age group. So I think we at the stage where a lot of children are playing other sports. They're still developing. They're very early age. They're developing themselves. We're competing for time. So we're not just competing with, you know, we're not really competing with other tennis clubs per se. We're not really competing just with other sports in an economy and in a world where you know, children are very, very overscheduled. They do a lot of different things. They do a lot of activities of all kinds of cultural, athletic, extracurricular. So I think it's for us. It's really about creating an engaging experience where the kids want to come back and not they play tennis because it looks good or it's going to look great for them in the future in a school application, but because they really enjoy coming back to our facilities and interact with the team on and off the court. So I think what's a healthy relationship, you know, it's an experience where you have a very supportive environment where you can also play a role in introducing the sport to the children, but the parents as well. A bridge between those two generations and help them create moments on their own. I think that's, to me, that would be a successful relationship, at least statistically speaking. When it's outside of the court, I think parents are pretty equipped to know what's going to be best for their family. But if we can play that role of connecting the family in a deeper way and having the parents to understand what they do on the court and why we do certain things on the court and how that's going to make them, you know, better tennis player and hopefully better human being as well. I think that'd be a great achievement.
And I think, you know, now that you're answering this, and I'm actually realizing this as we're talking, that it sounds like a stupid question for what you do, because you're already, with Court16, you're already creating that environment that allows the little kid, that little player, and that family, you know, to see the sport a different way, to see the sport the way that I imagine people that should do it that way, you know, fun and engaging and innovative and holistic and learning about different things and not just going there to, you know, learn about your forehand, your backhand, your foot here, your grip there. You know, it's something that's going to happen on its own, and it has to happen that way. That's why, you know, just kind of thinking about it, you are doing, just by having Court16 and by even having all those colors around in the walls and you know, making it like that, the way you make it is exactly the environment that is going to have that kid when he's your age, and he's going to think of his Court16, which is the place that he went from the beginning and the way he was taught to basically love the sport really for what it is, and have that healthy family relationship, and know that, you know, the dad wasn't there putting pressure, you know, make the ball, don't make, you know, don't do this, do that. I mean, if the dad or the mom was there, they even dropped them off there to do a birthday party, a movie night, you know, it's exciting. So that's how it should be. And I think this environment could be created in different types of facilities, different clubs, and it's all about the people. You're obviously creating it more with a facility, but I think, yeah, I mean, it's exactly what you're doing, the way I believe it should be for a kid. What's you know, just kind of looking at your career and being around families now, what would be just one advice that you would give, you know, families kind of embarking this journey with their kids if they're going to be in it for the long haul?
That's a question we're being asked quite often. I would say it's always tempting once you start to compete or you start to play at other clubs or tournaments to compare yourself. You know, it's as old as times. I had my coach telling me this when I was 10 years old. It's human nature to compare yourself with others. But I think as I get older and hopefully a little bit wiser, I understand so much the importance of just developing yourself and not compare. A 10-year-old is not another 10-year-old. A 12-year-old is not another 12-year-old. Everyone developed at different pace.
Yeah.
I think surround yourself with good people, with knowledgeable people, people who understand the importance of having a good technique and a good balance and good coordination and become a good holistic athlete just overall, and not comparing yourself too much. I think it's human nature. Again, it's not that as coaches or parents or adults we're failing, but I think it's good to have people around us who remind us that we don't need to always compare with others.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. It's a long process. I think it's a very long process, and as you can see, I mean, I'm sure you're in your going into your 40s. I mean, we're gonna be in our 50s, in our 60s. We're gonna be around tennis and around.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. We're gonna be around tennis. I mean, and I just think, again, it's like anything else. If you want a relationship for life, you have to nurture it. You have to respect it. You have to really just love it for what it is. Listen to what it gives you, what it gives your family, the potential. I mean, doors, the potential friendships, the potential everything that it can offer you. And I think there should be more people in the position of coaching, in the position of leadership, that need to speak like this and need to share this culture and this community. We would have more intelligent, more healthy people around the sport. Anyways, that's kind of my dream there with that. But to not take so much of your time, I kind of want to end on usually what we end, which is asking you to maybe give us a motto or two of your life and something that you kind of live by.
Wow. Try to do the right thing. I think you kind of know deep inside if this makes sense. So try to make use common sense when you make decisions. I think that's something that I tell my colleagues on a daily basis. Make decisions that feel good and that feel right. I think if you can live by that, that's already quite a bit.
Did somebody teach you that, or you learned that through life?
My wife reinforces that every day.
Gabby, she's she has the pants in that relationship. I know.
I'll let you make that statement and let's see if she agrees, but we're very complimentary.
Good. I know. I'm just kidding. And if there's anything that you could tell little Anthony, when he was little, what would you tell him about his persona or his career with tennis?
At what age?
I'm gonna say
what level of wisdom I had at that time.
I'm gonna give you the teenager age, 15, which is usually the most critical, 15, 16 or so.
I think at that age, developing, I've said it many times, developing holistically into a complete athlete is important. I think I can look back at many injuries that I had where I started to play too soon and I hadn't healed properly. I hadn't done the rehab training that was required to be healthy because there was a certain competition coming up. So I would say learn to listen to yourself, listen to your body, take your time when you need to recuperate. Probably a lot of understanding that sleep is important. as an athlete and as a human being. So everything is okay, even if you have to sleep a little bit more to recuperate. I think the importance of listening to yourself, having good people around you, I think that goes a long way as an athlete. If you already know to listen to your body, recoup when you have injuries, and have good people who can help you make good decisions, I think that can help you become a good athlete and a holistic human being.
I hope you've learned that lesson already. Now that you're older, with the 2 clubs running and a virus happening, pandemic right now, I hope you're listening to yourself. I hope you're sleeping. I hope you're stress managing. Having a newborn, huh? Not easy.
Yes. My son clearly keeps us up, but I can't complain much because he's been sleeping quite well. So he'd be upset if he understood that I was saying he's been sleeping quite fine the last 3 or 4 weeks. I knock on wood. So he seems to understand the importance of sleep as well.
You've taught him well already. Good parenting. Good job.
It's all on my wife.
Please say bye and hello or whatever to Gabby, and
I will.
Again, we'll stay in touch.
Very proud of you, Laura. This is a great project, and I'm looking forward to listen to the interview that you had with Nicolas Lapenti. Keep spreading the word and the passion for the sport that you love out there.
Yeah. Ciao. We'll talk.
Have a good night, Laura.